Changing gears now. Time for Truth or Fake. Vedika Bahl is over on the over by the big board, as I like to say. Starting with Mark Carney then, winning in Canada that federal election. A recent investigation found that for months, hundreds of thousands of right-wing posts online have been attacking Carney and trying to boost his opponents with a lot of, well, misinformation coming from American social media platforms. Tell us more.
That's right, Mark. This is the first national vote in which Canadian news outlets were banned from being shared on meta platforms, in other words, Instagram and Facebook. But despite that ban, Canadians have been blasted with fake and misleading political content on social media. Now, the Financial Times did an analytical deep dive of over 350,000 accounts on X, and that's since March when the snap election was announced. But it found a network of coordinated accounts attacking the Liberals' Mark Carney and boosting positive content of his Conservative opponent, Pierre Poilievre. Now, it also found that overall, and this is on X specifically, that sentiment about Mark Carney was far more negative in the run-up to the election than his Conservative opponent. Now, I want to circle back to X quickly because it is public knowledge that the CEO of X, Elon Musk, he's publicly voiced many times his preference for right-wing political parties and political leaders. And in the run-up to this election, he has complimented several times on his platform the Conservative candidate, Pierre Poilievre. He has also publicly endorsed him as well for Canada's next Prime Minister. And with his loose, shall we say, moderation and loose restrictions of X, that means that misleading and often AI-generated content can and does continue to thrive there. But this report, this probe by the FT, it also found that an increasing volume of misinformation about this election stems from the United States, and this includes podcasters, influencers, and mainly bots on US social platforms. Now, it's not always possible to trace where the accounts are based, but definitely US social platforms. Now, the FT found that many, the telltale signs, shall we see, that these accounts are bots. And those telltale signs, the impossibly high frequency volume of posting. Many of the posts had no original thought. They're mainly shares or retweets. But Mark, they also all had steady themes of attack. And these were often exacerbated by AI-generated content.
What were some of those consistent themes of attack used to try to discredit Mark Carney?
Well, there were several. There is this narrative that he's staunchly pro-China that I've seen emerge on social media, and that he has nefarious links to Beijing. And this goes back to his previous work experience in the private sector for companies that had investments in China. There's also been a network of deep fakes that were made to mimic the style of real Canadian news broadcasters like CBC and CTV. And these all falsely showed Carney promoting fraudulent investment platforms. Now, one of the most common forms of discrediting him, especially in the recent run-up to this election, is creating an association between Carney and the disgraced financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. And this is where AI was heavily used. We can see often, we can see very plain the telltale signs of AI. Often the logo, the AI logo, is left in the background. There's also several deformities, but these have been publicly discredited and denounced as clear AI. Again, we can see clear deformities there. So these have been slammed and denounced very clearly. But since early this year, since the beginning of this year, shall we say, this set of photos has been pretty consistently shared by bots and critics of Carney. It's photos showing Carney and his wife at a music festival in the UK. This is during his tenure as the governor of the Bank of England back in 2013. And he's pictured with Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the ex-girlfriend, the ex-socialite, now imprisoned of child sex trafficking. Now, the Carney campaign has pushed back on these pictures. As cited to the Toronto Sun, sources close to him slammed his opponent's campaign, Pierre Poilievre's campaign, saying that Mark Carney's wife went to high school with Ghislaine Maxwell, but apart from here and there bumping into each other socially, it was insisted by this source that they are very much not friends. But overall, Mark, there has been several lines of discrediting here, as we can see. If we look based on the findings of the Financial Times, of that deep dive study that they did of X specifically, there has been, based on those findings, an attack, a campaign of misinformation and AI content against Mark Carney. But I just want to conclude with this, that research by the Canadian Digital Media Research research network found that Canadians are more concerned of covert political meddling from the United States over any other country. And that includes China, Russia, India, and the UK.